For anyone that's traveled to the city of saints, that is Montreal, you know how exceptional this circuit is. Pair it with Pro Mazda and pair it with open wheel racing action, and checkmate for entertainment and racing. And today we welcome you to the circuit Gilles Villeneuve, located on the Ile Notre Dame, a man-made island in Montreal, Canada. You'll notice the brilliant residential area of Habitat 67 as you drive into the circuit. And what about that brilliant biosphere, of course, as well, which hosts the 9th round of the SimLab Pro Cup for 2019. All coverage on your beloved RaceSpotTV. We'll look at the track details in just a moment's time. But Randy, here we are at this beautiful street circuit that is Montreal. And the challenge today is going to be trying to pull off an overtake on that long back straight. The middle part of the lap is possible, but we know how tough and tight this tussle is around this street circuit.
Yeah, it's really the big difficult point about this circuit, isn't it? Is that you have a couple of decent, you have like a good break passing opportunity at the very start of the lap at turn 1, and then really up until you get, probably to the hairpin. That's probably the second best passing opportunity out there on track, but of course the best one going to be the run down that long back straightaway into the Champions chicane. And of course, the Wall of Champions on the right-hand side of that makes for very, very difficult passing in the braking zone into what is essentially you want a straight line that you can't really go side by side through there. So it's basically if you get stuck on the outside going into the chicane, you basically just got to give up the spot.
So that is Randy Cheneth, Jonathan Simon here as well in the broadcast booth for today's event. We're currently in qualifying with just under a couple of minutes remaining, and it is Uldis Particularly who heads the top of the timing screens, and he just crosses the line to begin another lap, and he's run a bit deep into turn 1, I can see, but no Daniel Fletcher here today, Randy. We've seen Daniel Fletcher at the past 3 rounds, and he's been very quick and hasn't capitalized in the race. So I guess at the end of the day, it doesn't really affect the race results in a sense, but for Uldis Particulars, his day will just be that little bit easier without Fletcher on board. Yeah,
you're right. We've seen Uldis have an absolutely fantastic season thus far as we work into the 9th round of the championship. He has just a fantastically huge stranglehold on the points at the moment, as we'll talk about, and it's really been a picture-perfect season for him.
And he just made a mistake there in qualifying, so it's not the best start for him, but he's currently leading by half a second on your grid ahead of Pete Tinkler in the number 44. Ridley and Jean-Michel Neon currently provisionally on that second row, and we're seeing again, Randy, that the driver of Martin Arnoldus, the veteran of Pro Mazda Racing, not electing to qualify today. He's going to have a fun event passing cars throughout the field, but it didn't work out too well for him the last time out at Road America when he practiced out.
Yeah, but sometimes you got to have a little bit of YOLO in your life, don't you? And I think he'll be absolutely fine starting from the tail end of this one as we keep an eye on Uldis as he works his way through the hairpin. 20 seconds left on the clock. I don't think he'll quite make it back to start-finish, but he doesn't exactly have to improve on much as he's currently a half second clear of everyone else in the field as the clock gets ready to count down 2-0.
And look at that. Craig Ridley just promoted himself to the 2nd position with a late time. He's put in a lot of practice to begin this event and gets his final qualifying time in. And that is it for qualifying this afternoon. We will take a look at your grid right now for our 19-lap event. Uldis Particulars having a brilliant campaign so far for the SimLab Pro Cup for 2019, and he currently leads the field away. Joining him on the front row is Craig Ridley with that late qualifying time. The second row consists of Pete Tinkler and the ever-thrilling Jean-Michel Noyon. Now, they were all in the 1 minute 34.1 range, as you can see, so it's going to be extremely tight for those final few steps on the podium. Down the rest of the grid, it includes Erwin Vandenberg and Jamie Brinkley for the 3rd row. Fabio Burstall starting a little lower than we expect here in the 7th position. And then rounding out your top 10 is Craig Forsyth. The rest of the grid on screen includes Scott Kirshner. And you can see Martin Arnoldus starting without a qualifying time. And Anthony Rice will also start down the back of the order and hoping to make his way up through the field. The brilliant thing I've liked, Randy, this season for the SimLab Pro Cup is I mean, we've been to Belle Isle twice. We've been to, well, Belle Isle twice. What was the other circuit I was thinking of? But we've been to a few.
Here, we'll just go down the
which is
list.
nice.
Watkins Glen, Barber Road, Atlanta, Canadian Tire. You're thinking of Belle Isle.
Oh, that's it. But we've been to some nice new circuits, which I haven't seen ProMaster go to in the past, but also some nice some differences. Like we went to Indy for the Indy 500, we went to Gateway for round 12 for another oval event. So we're doing things differently here.
Yeah, they are. It's very Americanized, and of course, following the theme of the Real Pro Mazda series here in the United States on the road to Indy. You see a lot of the road courses that these cars run, and they run a lot of the street courses as well. As we're getting ready to go green. It's not the long pace lap we saw at Road America.
No, very short pace lap. 19 laps of racing action will begin as soon as Aldous Particulus gets that green flag waved to him. And here we go, green for 19 laps of action.
Well, I tell you what, he didn't waste much time getting on it, did he? And look how strung out most of the field is. He basically came through that chicane, and he immediately picked up the throttle. We're already single file up and down the entire field, I think, for the most part. A couple side-by-sides in towards turn one. This is strung the field out a little bit, but it means we have ourselves a nice, clean start, and everyone rolls off of turn two.
Yeah, he's definitely planned that out to perfection as Aldous Particulus in the 666 car. So we're going to start right now. The top three is untouched, top four as well. No one's really pulled off an overtake into turn one. And it was mostly because, Randy, most of the drivers were still trying to navigate their way through that final chicane while the green flag waved.
Yeah, it's one of the difficult things about starting on this racetrack is that when you have the rolling start, you start going through that chicane. A lot of series, I know they'll make a mandate that the leader actually can't go until sort of a set distance down that straightaway to prevent exactly this, but not a rule in this championship. It means we get ourselves a nice clean start here up towards the hairpin. A little bit of move maybe from the 53 of Erwin Vandenberg onto Jean-Michael Noyon. That's not going to pan out though, and not even going to really try anything as they head down the back straightaway for the first time. And let's see if Craig Ridley can bring in Aldous Particulus with the slipstream this first time through.
Going to be close. He's a bit too far behind, but if he's going to pull off the move, it's going to be into turn one. As Particulus now screams through that final chicane, nails it perfectly, doesn't he? And I think he'll be untouched heading into the first corner. So here we go. At the end of the first lap, it is Aldous Particulus ahead of Craig Ridley. Then it's Tinkler, Noyon, Vandenberg, Berchtold, and Brinkley had a position change on that opening lap as the driver of Fabio Berchtold made his way past Jamie. And that is your top 7, and it's Cooper, Morgan, and Forsyth rounding out your top 10. Only one overtake on the first lap.
Yeah, and that, of course, coming between positions number 6 and 7 with Berchtold getting up that position. I will say, Craig Ridley's doing a very good job pressuring this 666 of Aldous Particulus. Aldous had a fantastic opening lap, but Craig able to slipstream up nicely down the back straightaway, kept that gap small, did the same thing down the run in towards turn one. I think he's going to have a good attempt of it. Into the chicane this time, potentially into the hairpin should he choose to do so.
So he's got the draft, but Particulus gets the run out of the corners. That's what I've seen so far. And here they go into this final hairpin. Just thinking about having a look, possibly, but it's such a bumpy braking zone, Randy, into that final hairpin. It just, I mean, the challenge to lock up is an immense one.
Yeah, it is a difficult braking zone heading up in towards the hairpin. We've seen a lot of big incidents down at that end of the racetrack over the years. I believe it was Robert Kubica who had the big pile up there. It was a Williams that I'm thinking of regardless. A huge incident at that end of the racetrack. And of course, but this right here they're going through, the most famous part of the circuit for cars collecting themselves easily right there, is Craig Ridley not able to quite suck up as much as I expected in the slipstream down that back straightaway. Maybe a situation that Aldous has that car really, really trimmed out. Craig might be better from, say, turn one all the way to the hairpin, but Aldous may just be able to outrun him on the run in towards turn one and into that chicane every single time.
Yeah, Particulus did run wide, though, so you can tell he's not too calm at the moment in the cockpit. Here they go to the infamous incident we had a few weeks ago with Vettel and Hamilton in Formula One. And Particulus now tight entry heading into 6 and 7. Now we saw Particulus crash here on the exit in qualifying. He nails it though on the exit this time round. And now Ridley, although a little bit far behind, I think the run out of this corner is where, Randy, he lost a lot of his advantage last time out. And this time, same can be said, Particulars just gets the drive out of turn 9.
Yeah, turn 9, I think, is really one of the most important corners on the racetrack because it sets you up both for the braking zone into this hairpin, and really it sets you up on the run out of this hairpin, because if you can't get a good run and can't hook up turn 9, you're never going to be close enough into the hairpin to potentially use that as a out-braking zone and a passing place in its own right, and you're never going to be close enough to maintain this gap down the back straightaway to potentially have a move set up in towards the final corner here at this chicane. So that corner at turn 9, you talk about the fact that the 666 has good traction coming off the corner. That could very well be why he's looking so clean out in front of the field here at the end of lap number 3.
So let's right on board with Ridley. Let's just have a listen to him through these first few sectors, because right now he's driving very smoothly, but we'll see if he can pull off a move at least, or force Particulars into an error.
Nothing going just yet, but I will say this gap has stayed pretty much exactly stable at about 4.5 tenths every trip around this racetrack. Our comparison graphic has basically been locked at 0.43 to 0.4 of a second. Every trip through a little bit wide through that sort of second chicane there for Craig Ridley, but he's able to get it sort of exited out nice. He's going to drop a tenth, maybe tenth and a half, but overall the loss shouldn't be too much. As you see, it starts opening up on the graphic out to about 0.6 of a second. The gap is currently in towards 8 and 9 once again. Let's see, can he hook up the corner here? He's just a little bit too fast, I think, on the entry, Johnny. Trying to carry too much speed in and not carrying nearly enough out of it.
Well, there's only one man on Craigslist to pass at the moment, and that's Particulars. Did you like that one?
Yeah, unfortunately, he's not in the for free section. He's on the for sale section. It's a really big price at the moment.
So he's a bit too far behind now, and I don't know. I think he might have lost that draft. We'll have a look and see at the end of this straight. The thing I find, Randy, is that I'm not a fan of underfueling and then expecting to draft people throughout the race, and then I end up finishing the race on the exact fuel I needed, if that makes sense. But maybe Ridley now, with all this drafting, could be a little bit more over-fueled, and that middle sector could prove a challenge.
Could very well be is behind John Michael Nguyen. He's actually going to challenge Pete Tinkler for third, and he's going to pick the spot up away before they ever turn into turn 1. So there's a 111 car, really the second overtake we've seen today inside of your top 5, top 10 for the most part. He moves himself up into that third position. A couple of other battles and other moving cars. John Morgan's up 2 spots from 9th up to 7th, and a couple other cars up a spot. Craig Forsyth up 1. I will say Martin Arnoldus not taking the start, a little bit unfortunate, because I think Martin would have had a lot of fun running his way through the field. He was mighty fun to watch at Road America before we got a couple of those incidents piled on top of each other. I will say, though, Craig Ridley has done well as well, Johnny, to maintain this gap between himself and your race leader, Voldis Butikelis. That was out to about 6 tenths after we saw that mistake at the second chicane, and able to reel it back into about 3.5 tenths by the time they got to the start-finish line.
Well, we saw this at Belle Isle, and we saw that if you pack the pressure on, even if you don't pull off a move for the next 10 laps, it can happen in those closing stages of the event. So we're having a look to see, well, we've had a look all race to see if Ridley can pass Particulars, but I guess he has optimism, because Jean-Michel Neon's done it on Tinkler, and now there could be 2 potential passes as Ridley closes in on Particulars. Tinkler backs off the gas heading into the final chicane and pushes Noyon to a mistake, and have a look at Pete Tinkler now. So this is interesting. I think Ridley's too far behind, but Pete Tinkler on a move to reclaim P3.
Let's see, can he get in towards turn 1? Doesn't get the braking zone he would have wanted, and he's going to force Noyon wide, though. That's another mistake through turn 2, and that's exactly what the double 4 wanted. And a bit of on-throttle oversteer for the 111. John Michael Noyon, he stopped in the wall. Won't have major damage. Didn't hit that wall hard, but just a mistake picking up the throttle means that Pete Tinkler gets a freebie for that podium at the moment.
And he may have damaged Jean-Michel Noyon, so that's not going to help his event, as he's now just ahead of Fabio Berchtold. And Berchtold, then, what's he doing all the way down the order? Berchtold's not having the best of races so far. But that was brilliant, wasn't it? What a pass there from Pete Tinkler. And it's just such a smart game of chess, wasn't it? Pushed Noyon off to, into the worst lines possible. And, I mean, hats off to Pete Tinkler there. He earned that.
Yeah, he really did. As we're taking a peek at the replay right now of what may have happened there to Jean-Michel Noyon. We'll see in from the TV cameras once again, and we'll get a bit of a ride on board with the replay camera as well. As you watch this 111 car in towards turn 1, just sort of gets the braking zone into turn 1 right, but in towards turn 2, just sort of gets a bit of oversteer on the exit, and that means he can't get anywhere near the hairpin. You hear him just throttle up, and that just brings the back end of that car around, and now he's immediately on the rear wing, trying to fight with this driver that he's currently working on. That's Craig Forsyth. He'll work the outside, going down to the chicane, still has slipstream of drivers in front of him. That'll allow him to just about get that pass complete, so Noyon immediately goes to work, working his way back up through this field.
And Forsyth was behind Berchtold to begin this lap. This is quite an interesting turn of events in this race. This train right now begins with Jamie Brinkley in 5th, John Morgan behind, Noyon in 7th, then it's Forsyth and Berchtold. So it's a 5-car train in your latter stages of the top 10. And look how close they all are right now. Here's one man, Noyon, trying to claim his way back up through the order. How about the ever-quick John Morgan and Jamie Brinkley ahead of the train? Berchtold, he should be nowhere near the bottom end of the top 10. This is going to be a nice race to shape up over these next few laps.
Thing is, though, Fabio's made a championship thus far out of being able to work his way up through these running orders. He's gotten himself a couple wins where he was just sort of the fortunate party, and I think with a big gaggle of cars out ahead of you right now, I don't think it's exactly unlikely to maybe see that pan out once again, especially with Jean-Michel Noyon, the quickest car of the bunch. Saw him up near the head of the field. He's going to be aggressive, trying to work his way back towards the front of the field. You see him up the inside here on, I believe that's John Morgan in the 127. Going to just about get that done, and now going to set his sights on the 8 out in front of him of Jamie Brinkley that he has to reel in. So for Jean-Michel Noyon, it's looking like a good, clean run back towards the head of this little pack.
I'm getting nervous. Here they are on the back straight. And going for a move here is Noyon up the inside. Oh, one driver heads to the pit lane. And that driver is... Oh, Craig Forsyth into the wall. The wall of champions. He's damaged the Pro Mazda, and the front is done and dusted. There's something going wrong for Craig Forsyth right now. He's just trying to wait for... Oh, he wants to head into the pit lane. Oh, it goes from bad to worse.
Yeah, that car is pretty much destroyed, and it was the 177 in front of him, just got caught up in the traffic. Don't think he was expecting that, and, well, he just sort of gets stuck out there in no man's land. Luckily, with a somewhat small grid, he doesn't have to wait too long before he has to take the tow, but he heads down pit road, and that's going to be game over pretty much, I think, for Forsyth. He'll be able to get the quick repair, so he'll be able to get back out there on track, but he'll have to basically be relying on someone to make basically the same mistake to really get any more positions up here. Because the thing about this track, you know, we saw Belle Isle, you talked about that, Johnny. Even though these are both sort of street-themed circuits, this one's a little bit more purpose-built racetrack in some ways. You know, this one I think is all in all a lot less technical than Belle Isle is. Belle Isle is more bumpier and a lot more places where it seems like you're right up against the wall on the exit of some of those corners where the track sort of falls away from you. You have a bump at the track out point that might throw you into the wall. Here it really is just that final chicane that it really gets claustrophobic with the racing wall here.
Yeah, that's true. And as we saw, one fast repair available to all the drivers, so Craig Forsyth takes that. And I think what makes this another challenge today, Randy, is the track temp of 44 degrees Celsius. Any iRacer knows that the grip is just so challenging the hotter it gets.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And it actually, in some ways, Johnny, maybe a situation where you see those hotter temps, and you might actually pack on a little bit more downforce than you might initially want, which will slow you down when you're going down that back straightaway. But if you're talking about running a 19-lap race, yeah, you'll be slower in the first handful of laps, but that extra downforce should help keep the tires underneath you, should help keep you from really sliding and bringing those tire temps up. That extra bit of downforce can really, really pay off in dividends in terms of being able to get you to the end of the race cleanly, which on a hot day at a track like Montreal, sometimes that's just a priority you need.
Another tip out there is, it's a stop-start circuit. Soften that rear anti-roll bar and stiffen the front. Get the front end to turn the car and get all the rear traction, especially in these hot conditions, as Randy was saying, is such a tough challenge in iRacing, in Pro Mazdas, whatever you name. So back to your lead. It's Particulous ahead of Ridley by less than a second. A bit of context for everybody out there. These two, one leads the championship, Aldous Particulous, and the other, P16 in the championship coming into this round. Unexpected battle for glory.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, Craig is a driver that I've seen have pace in the past, but it's not been his championship thus far, and you compare that to Aldous Particulous, who's is a more perfect championship possible than what Aldous has had going for himself? I mean, he's out there with an enormous lead. Just talking about the points again, he has 215 points to Fabio Berchtold, who's second in the points. He was currently buried down in 7th place in this field, to 152. He has a 63-point lead, and he has 6 positions made up over the second-place runner at the moment. Everything's going pretty much picture perfect for the Finn, I'd say, this year.
Yeah, it is. So 30 points available if you win on the road courses, 45 if you win on the ovals. There's only 2 ovals, and there's 1 left this year. So after this round, we head to Mid-Ohio, then Mid-Ohio, and then
Mid-Ohio.
Mid-Ohio. That's the
Yeah,
Aussie way to say it.
you said it with a bit of a bogan accent there.
I don't know why I said that. So then we go to Daytona for the Roval, so that is not for the oval. Then Gateway is our oval event, and then to end the season, the bumpy Sebring, and then Laguna Seca. I remember Formula 3 last season, they ended their week 12 at Laguna Seca as well. Not a bad event to end week 12. Just a tough place to overtake.
Yeah, it really is. It's sort of a classic American sports car circuit, and even has some IndyCar heritage as well, does Laguna Seca. And, of course, IndyCar actually going back to Laguna Seca this season. We know there's likely some changes coming to the track in some ways. I don't think anything major in terms of layout, probably some runoff. And me not being the greatest of IndyCar fans, I can't rattle off the details off that at the top of my head. But it's definitely, I think, an entertaining kind of end of the championship, Johnny, because I think Mid-Ohio is really one of the most underrated sort of American race circuits that we have in North America. I think it's one of the best road courses on the entire continent. Daytona Roval is, of course, iconic. Gateway is sort of as a Roval, it's not going to have the sort of Indianapolis sort of effect where these guys are just going to be super flat out and it's going to be a drafting sort of fest. Turn 1's really tight, so because of that, there's actually going to be some interesting things about how things pan out on the racetrack. And then Sebring's bumpy is but an iconic racetrack in its own right. It really is, I think, a fantastic last half of the season. Really, I think the entire kind of championship, the entire schedule as a whole is a bit of highlight tracks all in the same time.
Yeah, and we're going to head to North America for 12 of those 14 rounds this year. Obviously, this is one of the...
No, we're here for all 14. The whole championship is Canada, you mean, right?
Yeah, I meant United States of America, excuse me, not North America. So all rounds are in North America, 12 in the United States of America, 2 in Canada. We had Mosport round 4, and
this one
today, not in the United States of America. I don't know what world people are living in, but this is definitely not in the United States of America to me. Back to your lead now as we begin lap 12 of 19. So Particulous leads by a second. That is the advantage he has on Craig Ridley, and that advantage is exponentially growing over the course of this event. Tinkler is in 3rd, and he is comfortably in your podium positions, but will Owen Vandenberg here in these closing stages reel in that driver ahead. 35.3 last lap for Vandenberg. For Pete Tinkler, no lap counted on my screen, so he's definitely had issues where he's possibly had an off track or even cut the track at certain points.
Yeah, I've not gotten them for either of them, so maybe 0x or something coming out on those laps. So I'm seeing both their lap 10 and their lap 11 both not counting. Actually, I've seen that up and down the field, so... Oh, no, I'm not. I take that back. So something's going on with them and their laps, and that's not a great situation, especially when you talk about the fact that Pete Tinkler is comfortably in 3rd. It's more like the top 2 are comfortably in 1st and 2nd, because Pete's a full 10 seconds back off of Craig Ridley.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty much done and dusted. The fight for your top 2, unless there's incidents or drive error, there's nothing that's going to come into play. Tony Rice is up ahead, and he's about to be lapped by Particulous in a few moments' time. And Tony was very apologetic, Randy, for... Well, he enters the pits now, so he's not going to get in the way of the leaders, but
Oh,
Very
something's happened to
apologetic
Craig. That's thrown to about a 4-second gap.
To Craig Ridley?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, you're right. Where is this now? Is this has to be in the middle part of the lap?
I see
The last
something.
time I saw
He
him.
has an off track at turn 9, but it looks like he's already dropped back before that. I think he's had an off track sort of. You have that chicane before 8 and 9 through 6 and 7. I think he's made sort of back-to-back mistakes here. Let's see, through 6 and 7. Actually, 6 and 7 look kind of okay, but I think it's just 8 and 9. He was just, I think, way too hot in. He definitely ran off, and I think got a slowdown cutting that chicane.
Yeah, you're right. I've just seen it on my screen. So it's turn 9 where he's had the off track, as Randy said, and he's had to run off the track, obviously, and lost a couple of seconds from that. Have a look at the battle between Tinkler and Vandenberg. Something's gone wrong for Pete Tinkler.
Oh, no.
That promotes Owen Vandenberg up into your final podium position. So I thought that battle was quite... I thought the third position was quite comfortable for Pete Tinkler. Not so much.
I'm really confused by this because he gets the job done by turn 1. Pete Tinkler must make a mistake. Oh, yeah, he just flat out misses the braking zone for the chicane, and he's forced to cut it and take the slowdown. So a huge freebie there for Vandenberg. Slow as the 44 you see down the front straightaway, and really no way for him to even fight back for Pete Tinkler. So we'll get a ride on board with Pete here, see what exactly maybe caused this out braking maneuver. That likely went a little bit wrong, but not great for drivers. And we just talked about how he was safe in P3 and talking about Craig Ridley safe in P2, and back-to-back they both make mistakes.
Well, so this race all not over. I'm not going to confirm anyone in any spots. But Tinkler, as he flies through that final chicane, close to the wall of champions, he's got a few tenths of a second to make up here in Vandenberg. And what comes to worst, Randy, is that he might have even lost the toe. Depends how close he can get through this next lap.
Yeah, you're right. He's sort of right on the cusp of it. He's about a second back, and typically on the sim, about a second is where you start feeling that slipstream. That's kind of a universal point in all the cars. So he needs to have a nice sort of middle of the lap here to set himself up for the hairpin, get close, and not necessarily make the pass this lap, but need to chain together a couple laps here in the slipstream to suck that 53 right back up to the nose of that darker green and yellow number 44. So he can still do it. The 53 car is still just about within reach, but one small mistake, and it's going to be Erwin Vandenberg with quite a bit of breathing room to work with, and the draft pretty much gone.
He's pushing. Is Pete Tinkler. And Ridley's lost another couple of seconds, by the way. I'm looking at the gap there, 5.2. It looks like Particulus is going to run away with the lead here in that 666 car as we come towards the closing stages. But it's all about Vandenberg and Tinkler now, whether Tinkler can reclaim that third position, a spot he started from. And he came into this round in the championship, did Pete Tinkler, in the 5th position. So he should claim a good strong haul of points, but I don't think he'll be able to promote himself past Jean-Michel Leon for that 4th position.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Keeping an eye on the timing screen down the back straightaway. Pete Tinkler able to reel in 3/10 down the straight, but immediately through the champion chicane, Erwin Vandenberg stretched out another 3/10 of a second and brought it back out to over a second on the gap. So the 44 is still feeling the effects of the slipstream, but I think probably feeling a little bit nervous that time through the champion chicane, making sure to get it right as we're inside the final handful of laps of this motor race.
Tinkler runs deep into that first chicane, and he's lost time. He's definitely lost a lot of time as they head towards now. This is the 2nd chicane. God, I love this circuit so much. It's so tight, challenging. It's so good. It's definitely my favorite circuit in all of motorsports.
It's kind of the last of the F1 tracks that hasn't really been modernified, hasn't it? It's really kind of, I think they came out with this layout sometime in the mid-'80s, if I recall correctly. I know there was a slightly different version, but this sort of came about either in the mid-'80s or early '90s. I can't remember exactly because my F1 history isn't perfect, but it sort of just kind of sat like that since. And, even the scan that we have, this is now going on, I think, a 6 or 7 year old scan. It's been on the sim for quite a while now. And the track, you watch the F1 broadcast from about a month ago, and still has the same grass runoff points in places, and the chicanes are still pretty much the same. It's really not changed in a number of years. It's a classic, and it's nice to have one of these tracks sort of keep this classic aspect. And I think it's part of the reason that this race tends to be the best GP of the year, year on year.
And that hairpin that we just saw the drivers run out of, that used to be where the pit straight was, as when this track was first used. I think they had, now I'm going to touch up on my Formula One history, but I believe they were at Mosport for quite a bit. I might be wrong with that.
I know that they ran there once back when like the Lotus 49 was running like in those days. I know of that. Yeah. I don't know if we ever got the super fast modern cars around that place.
And as much as I love Formula One of my favorite circuits ever, one of my favorite races ever around this circuit was the Nationwide Series race in 2009. Yeah. I think where Marcus Ambrose made a mistake at the final corner on the final lap, led the entire race, and then Carl Edwards came past and won the event.
Yeah, I mean, Montreal is just one of those racetracks that I think that it suits kind of everything. I think NASCAR-style cup cars can have a fantastic race around this place just as equally as, what we have here, the Pro Mazdas. F1 cars obviously have fantastic races here. It's a very well-designed racetrack. Sports cars tend not to put on the greatest shows here, but there's been some entertaining sports car races all the same regardless. So it's just a generally, I think, perfect circuit for so many forms of motorsport that there's only a handful of tracks you can really say that about that suit, a lot of things. Spa certainly falls into that category. You might even argue Sebring kind of rolls in there, because I think even though it's currently famous for the big sports car races, I think Sebring, it would suit the likes of IndyCar or a NASCAR style event beautifully. And why not? Let's throw F1 around that place and let them handle the bumps at about 1,000,000 miles an hour.
Yeah, and while we're discussing this, Tinkler's unable to catch Vandenberg ahead. It's funny how you said it was one of your favorite circuits that hadn't been modified, and then I thought about it and I said, ooh, like almost every circuit is not its original, because obviously you have to evolve over time, make the circuit safer and better. And I was thinking back at Monza, and I'm like, Monza's never been the same. I think the only circuit that's been the same, Randy, is the Hockenheim ring. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, Hockenheim's definitely not changed at all. Yeah, I mean, in some ways, as ironic as it may seem, the two tracks I think on the F1 calendar that have had the least amount of changes, at least in terms of getting overly modernized, are probably the two most famous street circuits of Montreal and Monaco. I mean, Monaco, of course, has had some slight layout changes. The final sequence of corners is different, and of course, once upon a time, kind of the whole swimming pool sector of the racetrack didn't exist, and it was kind of just a straight line from that left-hander at the exiting the chicane down towards the hairpin. But, for the most part, the entire Monaco lap is pretty much, unchanged as well, as we're going to have 2 laps to go this time through. But I think it's what... Go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say, look at Tinkler right now. Sorry to interrupt, Randy. He's going to make a move for P3 on Vandenberg. Fake the inside and went... Well, what's going to turn into the inside, into turn 2 here. They're going to be alongside each other for that final podium position with just a couple of laps to go. And on the penultimate lap goes Pete Tinkler, searching for a move for P3, looking for another attempt here into the first chicane. And he's going to force Vandenberg on the defensive, and now he's going to have a good run on to that second chicane.
And what you need to do here to set yourself up, he's going to make him another move up here towards the second chicane. Beautiful run for the 44 as they work side by side through turns number 6 and 7. It's going to be the 44 on the outside, not on the preferred lane, but he'll have a bit of momentum under this GoDaddy bridge and on the run in towards turns 8 and 9, and he's going to get that spot up. Beautiful driving from the 44. Something has happened to the 53, because I don't think that gap was that close heading down that back straightaway, but Pete Tinkler maybe got an opportunity and he pounced, as with a lap and a half left, he put himself back on the podium.
Vandenberg on the braking now. He's going to run a bit too hot, is he? Maybe not. He's going to have a good draft here over this next straight. So whilst Aldous Particulars heads through the final corner and will get the white flag to begin the final lap, the battle for your final podium position continues. Vandenberg here in the draft. behind Tinkler. That's the first time Tinkler's seen that third position since he gave it up with a mistake during the middle stages of the race, and nails that final chicane, does Pete Tinkler, and it looks like Vandenberg's going to be on the back foot for these remaining few corners.
Yeah, not a great exit coming off that champion chicane there for Erwin Vandenberg, and that gives that 44 car that little bit of breathing room he needs. He now knows that he doesn't need a picture-perfect kind of middle couple sectors. He just needs to be safe and not make a mistake. But that 53 car is still looming. It was a good run off of turn 2, and Vandenberg is not giving up yet. He's going to put in all hopes for him, what is going to be the best middle couple of sectors that he has done all race to bring that gap down and in by the time he gets to the hairpin.
So he wants to push, he doesn't want to over push though. Is 9 seconds behind to Fabio Berchtold, who's made his way up through the order. So make a mistake and Berchtold will be all over them if they get these final few corners wrong. Vandenberg runs it deep. I think his day is not going to end on a high here unless Tinkler pretty much beats himself through the final few corners. Lapped car ahead is Tony Rice, but I don't think Anthony Rice will be able to make it. And here's, yes, you're correct, Randy. Aldous Particulars through the final chicane he goes, and he takes another race victory to extend his championship lead. There's the Alonso swerve as he crosses the line. Race win to Aldous Particulars for round 9 here from Montreal for the SimLab Pro Cup for 2019. How about Craig Ridley, 16th in the championship coming into this round, and what a strong haul of points for him coming home second. And we will confirm Pete Tinkler in your final podium position after that late race mistake from Erwin Vandenberg. But for Aldous Particulars, Randy, his championship takes another step in the correct direction.
Yeah, and it's hard to start counting and just saying the championship is pretty much over, isn't it? Because he's going to have such a huge gap over the rest of this field, and not really a lot of races left. You have the Mid-Ohio road course, the Daytona Roval. I mean, we talked about it, Gateway, Sebring, Laguna Seca. 5 rounds left now, heading in towards the end of summer, and this championship kind of will cap summer off, ending on September 21st when they head to Laguna Seca. And for the 666 car of Aldous, the way he's been running, it is mighty difficult to be able to leave here and not just crown him champion at this point and say, all right, everyone else, you're fighting for second. But I think that's basically what's happening.
Yep, and Kurt Van Wagenen will be your last driver to cross the line this afternoon, and he will start 13th, end in 13th. Oh, is Scott Kirshner? No, Nong Kan Yuen. Not Kan Yuen is, he's crashed on the final lap, has he? Oh, this is ridiculous. So, no, he didn't. No, he's come through the final chicane. We'll have a look at a replay shortly. And he's tried to reverse over the line because he spun around at the final chicane. Oh, goodness, that's hilarious. But he ends up coming home in the 12th position nevertheless.
We're getting a replay of it now as I sort of just rewound the cameras way back, had to find him. Let's see what happens when you win. His steering wheel looks a little off. He may have had previous contact somewhere in towards this final chicane here on this final lap. He's a little bit hot. No, yeah, he gets that thing spun around. He ends up facing the wrong direction, and at this point he decides I could either spend the time to turn it around or I could just reverse down the front straightaway and take the checkered flag this way. I think I'm a fan of the reverse way. Oh, that wasn't he needs to go back to driver's ed, though, because that wasn't exactly the smoothest trip in reverse I've ever seen. And he did more damage to the car backwards down the straight than he actually did coming off the chicane. And he just actually, nope, that car was, oh no, that was position when Wagenen picked that spot up. That was an interesting drag race with one car destroyed on the wall and another one just coming through at full speed. But we're ready for your post-race results.
Yeah, we'll round this up through the post-race results, but the funniest part about that is that Nguyen, despite losing that position of Van Wagenen, actually broke even on the final lap because there were issues for Scott Kirshner. We'll talk about those in just a few moments' time. Let's take a look at your final race results. Aldous Particulars wins in just under half an hour here from Montreal, and he extends his championship lead. He was under pressure from Craig Ridley behind, but of course Ridley lost his strong pace towards the end of that event. Pete Tinkler and Erwin Vandenberg ended up in 3rd and 4th. They were in a scrap throughout the entirety of the event. Tinkler initially lost that final podium position, and then Vandenberg ended up making an error, and that made Pete Tinkler, that climbed him back up the order into P3. Berchtold climbing through the order as well. He found himself up at a poor start in the 9th position at worst, and now ended up in 5th towards the end of this race. So he rounded up out top 5. Then he was followed by John Morgan and Mark Cooper. We know Jean-Michel Leon had such a dramatic event. Then Brinkley in the 9th position, followed by Craig Forsyth. So those are the last 3 now. Van Wagenen in 11th. Gained 2 spots on the final lap because Nguyen had that issue we just saw and ended up in 12th. And Scott Kirshner, to begin the lap, ended up spinning, and he lost a couple of positions from that. That spin was at the first chicane. Tony Rice ended up rounding out our finishers here today. He was 2 laps behind towards the end of the day. We know Martin Arnoldas did not start this race. So that is your racing action here over, Randy. Any takeaways before we head to our next round, which will take place in a couple weeks' time from Mid-Ohio?
Yep, 2 weeks' time, July 27th. We head to not really that far south, actually, from here. It's probably a handful of hours, but not that crazy given the scale of the United States. Johnny should be used to that coming from what is a similarly sized country, or continent, rather, we'll say. But, yeah, Mid-Ohio, I think it's going to be a fantastic track. I think it'll be actually in some ways similar to this one, Johnny. Of course, a lot of sort of, a lot more elevation change and a lot more mid to high speed corners at Mid-Ohio. But Mid-Ohio, I think, is still, in Montreal, they share the fact that there's really only one good braking zone that comes at the end of a really long straight comparatively to what you see around the entire rest of the lap. So even though it's the tracks have a lot of differences, I think that it's a very, very big, I think it's a large similarity that the tracks share, and I think we'll see a relatively similar race because of it. Of course, we don't have any close walls to the exit like we have here at Montreal, no champion chicane-style corner at Mid-Ohio, but I think it's going to be a fantastic race, and probably one, given the way this season's gone, the oldest Putekelis is going to win.
Yep. And we will wrap up now. That next race will be on the 27th of July. So it'll be for 22 laps of action in just a couple of weeks' time around Mid-Ohio, as Randy just elaborated on. And it will host round 10 of the SimLab Pro Cup for 2019. It will be on RaceSpotTV. So don't miss it, of course. Subscribe on our associated channels. Thanks to all you viewers for joining us for today's broadcast. As usual, with Randy Cheneth behind the scenes on production and commentary, I am Jonathan Simon. Thanks as well to our entire RaceSpotTV crew for their work on overlays, animations, cameras, all of the liking. They make this broadcast what it is today, because this has been a RaceSpotTV presentation broadcasted from the circuit Gilles Villeneuve. We say so long from Montreal. We'll see you back in the US, the virtual US, in a couple weeks' time.